The Galactic Council had always dismissed humanity as a minor species, brash, undisciplined, and divided. The great empires of the cosmos saw them as a curiosity rather than a threat, a species too fractured by internal conflict to ever stand as a true force in galactic affairs. But when the Zalari Dominion, a warlike empire of reptilian conquerors, launched a sudden invasion of Sol, humanity had no choice but to unite or face extinction. The attack was brutal, swift, and devastating. Earth's orbital defenses crumbled in days. Mars was turned into a burning wasteland. The few remaining human colonies scattered across the stars could do nothing but watch in horror. In the heart of the ruined United Nations Space Command headquarters, a war council was formed. For the first time in history, all of humanity, nations, corporations, colonies, and even rogue factions, were forced to cooperate. It was not diplomacy that bound them, but survival. Generals and admirals from across the fractured human factions gathered, and under the shadow of annihilation, they set aside their differences. Among them stood Admiral Elias Cade, a seasoned strategist known for turning hopeless battles into victories. Beside him was Dr. Amina Voss, a scientist who had spent her life unraveling the secrets of alien technology. And then there was Captain Isaac Rourke, a former mercenary who had fought in 100 wars across the stars, now humanity's most dangerous weapon. But even united, the odds were grim. The Zalari fleet outnumbered them 100 to 1, wielding technology centuries ahead of Earth's. The Galactic Council refused to intervene, fearing the Zalari's wrath. Humanity stood alone. In the midst of despair, a plan was formed, bold, desperate, and utterly human. Instead of fighting a conventional war, humanity would wage an asymmetrical one. They would turn the enemy's strength against them, harnessing every scrap of human ingenuity, ruthlessness, and defiance. As Admiral Cade stood before the gathered leaders, his voice rang with steel determination. If the galaxy wants to see us as savages, let them. We will show them what happens when humanity stops fighting each other, and starts fighting together. The final war had begun. The first strike came not from the humans' traditional military forces, but from a group of rogue hackers. The Zalari fleet, confident in their dominance, relied heavily on their advanced AI-driven systems to control their vast war machines. It was the one flaw that humanity could exploit. Lena Morozov, a former criminal turned cyber warfare expert, led the assault. She had been in the shadows for years, her skills honed in underground networks, but now her talents were critical. Alongside a ragtag crew of tech specialists, she infiltrated the Zalari communications grid, using stolen data from the few surviving human vessels to plant a virus. The results were immediate and catastrophic. For the first time in the war, a Zalari warship malfunctioned, its AI shut down and its crew left vulnerable. The rest of the fleet was thrown into chaos as their advanced systems faltered. It was only a brief window, but it was enough. Captain Isaac Rourke, having already assembled a fleet of human privateers and mercenary groups, led the counterattack. His fleet struck fast and hard, targeting the now-disrupted Zalari warships with precision and devastating force. The humans' ships were outdated and underpowered compared to their enemies, but they fought with a fierceness and creativity that caught the Zalari off guard. Using unconventional tactics, attacking at impossible angles, setting traps, and launching surprise strikes, humanity made its first real mark on the Zalari Dominion. The invaders were caught off guard by the sheer unpredictability of the human strategies. They had never fought against such an unruly enemy, and it was beginning to show. On Earth, the war took on a new dimension. In cities that had once been fractured by politics, corporations, and ideologies, people rallied under a single cause. Resistance movements, once considered disjointed and ineffective, now flourished as humanity's will to survive coalesced. From the ruins of the old world came new leaders, people like Commander Nadia Huang, a former politician who now led a rebel army in the ashes of New York. While humanity's forces began to push back the Zalari, the war was still far from over. But in the chaos of the early battles, a glimmer of hope was born. For the first time, humanity had struck back, and the invaders were starting to realize that this would not be the easy conquest they had expected. However, as the Zalari regrouped and adapted, they began to unleash their true power. The Zalari were no fools. Humiliated by humanity's first successes, they swiftly adapted to the unexpected tactics and began to retaliate with full force. Their war machines, initially crippled by the humans' technological sabotage, quickly regained their composure, thanks to the genius of the Zalari's top engineers. They had underestimated humanity's potential for chaos, but now, they would make sure that mistake was never repeated. The Zalari began to deploy more advanced weapons, planet-killing orbital cannons, genetically engineered war beasts that ravaged human colonies, and devastating drones that could rip apart entire fleets with surgical precision. Each attack was meticulously planned, overwhelming human defenses in waves. The destruction was almost incomprehensible. On the front lines, Captain Rourke's fleet fought with ferocity, but they were outclassed in firepower. Every victory was hard-earned, every escape barely achieved. The human forces, though determined, were constantly on the back foot, unable to match the overwhelming might of the Zalari on the battlefield. The once hopeful momentum from the surprise counteroffensive began to fade, replaced by the harsh reality of their situation. It was during one of these brutal skirmishes in the outer reaches of the Sol system that Admiral Cade received word of a secret weapon, an ancient alien artifact, a relic from a long-forgotten civilization, discovered on a lost moon of Jupiter. The artifact was said to contain a source of power so great that it could shift the balance of the entire war. But retrieving it would be perilous. The Zalari had already begun to focus their efforts on the region, sensing that something important was hidden there. Admiral Cade knew that this was humanity's best chance to turn the tide. If they could control the artifact, they could gain the upper hand over the Zalari, and possibly rewrite the future of the galaxy. Dr. Amina Voss, the brilliant scientist, was tasked with deciphering the artifact's mysteries. She had spent years studying alien technologies, but nothing prepared her for what they were about to uncover. The relic was a complex network of energy fields and pulsing lights, seemingly alive in its own way. Yet, despite its alien nature, there was something undeniably human about it. Dr. Voss believed it held the key not just to defeating the Zalari, but to understanding the forgotten history of the galaxy itself. While the scientists and engineers worked tirelessly to unlock its secrets, humanity's greatest military minds scrambled to come up with a strategy to stave off the Zalari's increasingly overwhelming offensive. With every passing day, the human resistance grew more desperate. Entire colonies fell, cities were razed, and the death toll skyrocketed. On Earth, Commander Nadia Huang led her rebel forces into the heart of Zalari-held territory, launching guerrilla operations that sought to disrupt supply lines and cripple their military infrastructure. Her forces, though outnumbered, were relentless. But the brutality of the Zalari occupation left her with little room for hope. For every victory they won, the Zalari retaliated with a cruelty that could break even the most resilient spirit. As humanity's forces scrambled to hold their ground, there was one thing they all shared, an unyielding belief that if they could just survive long enough, they would find a way to turn the tide. And as Dr. Voss unlocked the final key to the artifact's power, she realized something chilling: what they had uncovered was not just a weapon. It was a message. A warning. The message within the alien artifact sent a shockwave through the human resistance. Dr. Amina Voss, her mind racing, decoded the cryptic symbols and found that the artifact was not just a weapon, it was a relic of a long-dead civilization that had once dominated the galaxy. And more disturbingly, it revealed the origins of the Zalari dominion. The Zalari were not the invincible conquerors they appeared to be. They were the descendants of an ancient, warlike race that had once been part of a galactic empire, but they were not the empire's rulers. The true masters were the beings who had built the artifact, an advanced species known as the Orc, who had vanished millennia ago. The Orc had built their empire on the back of countless lesser species, using technology far beyond anything humanity had encountered. The Zalari had inherited this technology, but had twisted it, corrupting the true purpose of the Orc's legacy. But it wasn't just the Zalari's origin that was revealed, it was their end. The Orc had created the artifact to be a failsafe, a last line of defense against their own creations. The artifact was designed to prevent the rise of another species that could threaten the galaxy as they had. The Zalari had unlocked its power, but they had never understood its full implications. Now, humanity had the key to wield it. As Dr. Voss realized the true potential of the artifact, she saw a terrifying possibility. The Zalari were not just invaders, they were a symptom of a much larger threat. The true enemy was the legacy of the Orcs themselves, and humanity had become the unwitting heirs to their legacy. To defeat the Zalari, they would have to face the dark truth of the galaxy's past, and rewrite it. The discovery changed everything. Humanity's fight was no longer just about survival. It was about reclaiming their place in the galaxy and breaking the cycle of destruction that the Orcs had created. They were no longer fighting just for freedom, they were fighting for the future of the galaxy itself. Admiral Cade knew that the artifact was the key to winning the war. But it was also a dangerous weapon that could easily fall into the wrong hands. As the humans focused their efforts on harnessing its power, they also needed to protect it from the Zalari, who would stop at nothing to capture it. The battle for the artifact took a new turn. The Zalari, realizing the significance of what the humans had uncovered, launched an all-out offensive to seize it. Their forces, now bolstered by their overwhelming technological superiority, were ready to crush humanity's last hope. Meanwhile, on Earth, the rebellion led by Commander Nadia Huang found itself caught in the crossfire. The Zalari had begun to deploy their most devastating weapon, bioengineered war machines, designed to decimate entire populations. As cities fell and millions of lives were lost, Huang's forces fought tooth and nail to protect humanity's last bastions. The brutality of the Zalari's tactics became evident. There was no mercy, no quarter given. In the darkness of the war, humanity's resolve grew. The artifact, though dangerous, became a symbol. It was no longer just about defeating the Zalari, it was about taking control of their destiny. Humanity had been given the chance to rewrite the galaxy's future, but the cost would be high. And as the final battle for the artifact began, a terrible realization set in: victory would require more than just technology or strategy. It would require humanity to face the deepest parts of their own soul, to embrace the very chaos and unpredictability that had made them a force to be reckoned with. The galaxy would change forever, and the question remained: would humanity rise to the challenge? Or would they become just another footnote in the endless cycle of destruction? The war had reached its breaking point. The Zalari were closing in on the artifact, and with each passing day, their grip on the galaxy tightened. Earth, once the cradle of humanity, was now little more than a battleground, a shattered world teetering on the brink of annihilation. But the last remnants of humanity's spirit, its resilience, its unyielding will, remained intact. Admiral Elias Cade had gathered what remained of humanity's military forces in the outer rim of the Sol system. His fleet, battered and bruised, was now the last line of defense between the Zalari and the artifact. The forces of Earth's remaining allies, militant factions, rogue colonies, and mercenaries, rallied under Cade's leadership, their hope hanging by a thread. They had nothing left to lose. The Zalari, relentless in their pursuit of victory, launched a final assault on the human fleet. Their warships, now more advanced than ever, descended from the skies like vultures circling their prey. The humans, vastly outnumbered, had no choice but to engage in a desperate defense, launching a fierce counteroffensive even as their fleets were being shredded by the Zalari's superior firepower. Among the chaos, Captain Isaac Rourke led a daring raid against the Zalari flagship, a massive warship that commanded the entire fleet. His mission was simple: disable the flagship's command center and buy humanity enough time to access the artifact's full potential. But the journey was perilous, and as the battle raged around him, Rourke's ship was slowly becoming a wreck. The human forces could no longer maintain a coordinated defense. As Rourke's squadron made its way to the flagship, they were intercepted by a squadron of Zalari warships. The ensuing battle was a brutal display of human resourcefulness and Zalari might. For every enemy vessel the humans took down, another appeared in its place. Rourke's team fought with everything they had, defying the odds, using every trick in the book, but it was clear they could not hold out forever. Back on Earth, Commander Nadia Huang had mobilized every resistance fighter she could find, leading them in a final attempt to protect the artifact from the Zalari. The city of New York, now a war-torn ruin, had become the heart of humanity's last stand. The streets were filled with the sounds of gunfire, explosions, and the desperate cries of civilians. But through it all, Huang remained steadfast. The Zalari had unleashed their deadliest weapon yet, an army of genetically engineered war beasts, monstrous creatures designed to obliterate any form of resistance. These creatures were unstoppable, each one a living weapon of destruction. Yet, humanity fought back with every ounce of strength they had left. The war was no longer just about strategy or technology, it was about the very soul of humanity. And then, the unthinkable happened. In the midst of the chaos, Dr. Amina Voss, working feverishly alongside a team of scientists, finally unlocked the full potential of the artifact. It wasn't just a weapon of mass destruction, it was a gateway. The artifact could channel the raw energy of the galaxy itself, reshaping the fabric of reality. But the process would be dangerous, so much power in one place was a double-edged sword. Voss knew that they had to act fast. She contacted Cade, her voice steady but filled with urgency. "Admiral, we can shift the tide. We can end this, once and for all. But we have to open the gateway now. We need to channel the artifact's power." The decision was agonizing. Using the artifact meant risking the very fabric of existence itself. But it was humanity's only hope. Cade gave the order. The artifact hummed with an unnatural energy as its power surged through the galaxy. Across the stars, the Zalari felt the disturbance, their weapons began to malfunction, their ships losing control. It was as if the very laws of the universe were bending to humanity's will. In a single, unified strike, the artifact unleashed a burst of energy that severed the Zalari's connection to their advanced technology. The Zalari fleet faltered. Their war beasts, once invincible, collapsed under the strain of the artifact's power. The command structure of the Dominion broke apart, leaving their forces in disarray. But the cost was immense. The artifact's power was draining, and humanity had only moments before it overloaded. As the artifact's energy reached its peak, Admiral Cade made one last, desperate decision. He ordered a final charge, sending every remaining human ship into the heart of the Zalari fleet. The ensuing clash was brutal and chaotic, but the tide of the war had already turned. The Zalari, now unable to maintain their technological dominance, were outmatched by the raw will of humanity's warriors. In the final moments, as the artifact's power began to wane, Captain Rourke's team breached the Zalari flagship. With a single, coordinated strike, they disabled the command center, crippling the remaining Zalari forces. The battle was over. The war was over. The Zalari Dominion, once the most powerful force in the galaxy, lay in ruins. Their fleet was shattered, their leadership in disarray, and their once mighty war machines now useless. Humanity had emerged battered but victorious, and the galaxy would never be the same again. But the cost had been staggering. Earth, though not destroyed, was scarred beyond recognition. Once vibrant cities were now husks of their former selves, the ground littered with the remnants of war. Colonies across the stars had been lost, and countless lives had been sacrificed. The human race had stood at the precipice of extinction, only to pull itself back with a ferocity and resolve that the universe would not soon forget. Admiral Elias Cade, though hailed as a hero, knew that the real battle was just beginning. The Zalari had not been the true threat, they had been the symptom of a much deeper, far more dangerous force. The Orc, the long-dead civilization that had created the artifact, had left behind a legacy of destruction. And though the Zalari were defeated, their creator's influence still lingered. The artifact, though a symbol of humanity's triumph, was also a harbinger of a far more complex future. As the remnants of the Zalari fleet drifted into the void, Dr. Amina Voss and her team of scientists worked tirelessly to understand the full scope of the artifact's power. What they had uncovered was more than just a weapon, it was a gateway to knowledge that could reshape the galaxy itself. But the knowledge was dangerous, and unlocking its full potential could bring both salvation and ruin. Humanity was now the caretaker of this legacy, and the responsibility weighed heavily on them. Meanwhile, on Earth, the people began to rebuild. Commander Nadia Huang, having led the charge on the ground, now turned her attention to the future. The war had united humanity in a way that no ideology or government ever could. The nations, once divided by borders and politics, now stood together, bound by the shared struggle they had endured. There was hope in the air, but it was tempered by the knowledge that the galaxy was still a vast, unknown place. The Zalari had been but one piece of a much larger puzzle, and humanity was only beginning to understand its role in the galaxy's future. In the ruins of New York, now a symbol of both humanity's perseverance and its sacrifice, Huang stood at the edge of the battlefield, looking out over the horizon. The sun was setting, casting a golden glow over the fractured cityscape. It was a symbol of both the end and the beginning. The darkness of war had passed, but the journey ahead would be long and uncertain. The question was no longer whether humanity could survive, it was whether they could rise above the mistakes of the past and forge a new future for themselves and the galaxy. As the final pieces of the Zalari threat were eradicated, Admiral Cade received word from the Galactic Council. They had been watching the events unfold from afar, and now, with the Zalari broken and humanity standing tall, they were ready to act. The Council, once dismissive of humanity's potential, had begun to recognize the strength that had brought the human race to this point. They were extending an olive branch, a tentative offer for humanity to join the galactic community. It was a monumental moment. Humanity, which had once been an insignificant species on the fringe of galactic affairs, was now a power to be reckoned with. The question was no longer whether they could survive the galaxy, it was how they would reshape it. But Cade knew that this new era would not be without challenges. The galaxy was vast, filled with ancient civilizations, forgotten powers, and dangers yet unseen. Humanity's place within it would depend not just on its ability to survive, but on its ability to adapt and evolve. The future would be forged by those who dared to push beyond the limits of what was known, to challenge the very fabric of existence itself. The artifact was still a mystery, its full potential yet to be explored. The galaxy was teeming with new opportunities and threats. But for the first time in history, humanity stood united, ready to face whatever came next. As Cade looked out over the horizon, he saw a glimmer of hope that had not been there before. The final war had ended, but the true journey was just beginning. Humanity stood on the edge of a new era. The final war had been a crucible, a test of their resolve, their ingenuity, and their ability to adapt. The Zalari were no more, their empire shattered, and their vast technological legacy now lay dormant. But the true challenge was just beginning. The artifact, once the key to defeating the Zalari, had become both a beacon of hope and a heavy burden. The power it contained was vast, capable of reshaping entire star systems, but it came with a price. The knowledge it held could either unite the galaxy or fracture it irreparably. Admiral Elias Cade, now a symbol of humanity's strength, stood before the Galactic Council. The Council had once viewed humanity as little more than an afterthought, a species at the mercy of more powerful races. But after the war, everything had changed. The Council was eager to extend an offer to humanity, to allow them a place in the galactic fold. But Cade knew the price of this alliance. Humanity would have to tread carefully, for the galaxy was filled with species whose motives were as ancient and unknowable as the Orcs themselves. With the galaxy's future hanging in the balance, Cade and his council of advisors made a bold decision: humanity would stand alone, at least for now. They would not rush into an alliance until they fully understood the implications of the artifact's power. And more importantly, they would not be beholden to the interests of other species who had no understanding of the sacrifices humanity had made. Meanwhile, on Earth, Commander Nadia Huang oversaw the reconstruction. The people of Earth, though scarred, were determined to rebuild their world. Cities began to rise from the ashes, powered by the newfound knowledge from the artifact and the resilience that humanity had learned through war. It was not just a physical rebuilding, it was a spiritual one. The war had unified humanity in a way no previous event ever had. Old divisions had been swept away, replaced by a shared sense of purpose. But even as Earth began to heal, there was an undercurrent of tension. The artifact's power had not been fully unlocked, and the forces that had created it, those who had shaped the very course of the galaxy, remained a mystery. Humanity's newfound strength was undeniable, but it was still fragile. The galaxy, with all its ancient civilizations, long-forgotten secrets, and looming threats, was not kind to those who were still learning how to navigate its depths. Dr. Amina Voss, the scientist who had deciphered the artifact, continued her work, pushing the boundaries of what humanity could achieve. She discovered that the artifact was more than just a relic, it was a map, a guide to the very fabric of spacetime. It had the potential to not only rewrite the future but to connect humanity to the past in ways no one had ever dreamed possible. There were other civilizations out there, she realized, hidden in the corners of the galaxy, waiting to be discovered. Some might be allies, others, potential enemies. Humanity's destiny was now intertwined with these unknown forces. In the coming years, humanity would be tested in ways that they could not yet imagine. But they would face it together, united by their experiences, their will, and the knowledge that they had proven themselves capable of defeating the greatest threat the galaxy had ever known. The first steps were slow. Diplomatic emissaries were sent to the Galactic Council, cautiously seeking to establish peaceful relations. Humanity's representatives, though young in the ways of galactic politics, spoke with the authority of those who had faced death and come out the other side stronger. The galaxy was watching, waiting to see if humanity would fall into the same patterns of greed and conquest that had plagued countless other species. But in the hearts of the human people, there was no doubt. They had risen from nothing. They had faced the darkness and emerged victorious. They had proven that even in a universe filled with giants, it was not size or strength that determined the future, it was the fire of the spirit, the determination of a few against the odds. As Admiral Cade looked out at the stars, he knew that humanity's place in the galaxy would not be dictated by anyone but themselves. They had earned their right to stand among the stars. The galaxy was vast, mysterious, and dangerous, but humanity had faced the impossible and triumphed. The future, for the first time in a long while, was theirs to shape. The final war had been a dark chapter in their history, but it had also been their rebirth. And the galaxy would never forget the day humanity proved that, no matter the odds, they would always rise again.